Welcome to Late of the Rings, a podcast dedicated to Lord of the Rings the card game. My name's John, and here's my co-host. He's got a cave troll. It's Emery.
Hello, John. I think you're meant to say that in a slightly more resigned but sarcastic and alarmed way.
Yeah, but I'm not alarmed. It stood right behind you.
What? Very misunderstood creature, the cave troll. You know what?
Yeah.
In the film, I felt really sorry for the cave troll.
Oh, but
have I mentioned that before? Have we spoken about
at the
that?
point when it gets its voice box cut.
That bit. That's horrible. That's a poor thing.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's, a simple pawn in a greater game, and it never really had a chance. I felt for the cave troll. What can I say?
Were you rooting for it, or did you just feel for it?
No, I just felt for it.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Oh, supporting the good guys.
Yeah. In Lord of the Rings, I root for the cave troll.
Yeah. Come on, the bad guys.
No, just the cave troll.
Oh, just the cave troll, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I am often quite drawn towards neutral characters in things generally. I'm a big fan of the Ents.
Oh, yeah.
I like the Ents. I think it's because they're very slow and tree-like, so a bit similar to me. So I think I can, connect with them in that way. But also, I don't know. I think there's something about that neutrality which is quite, maybe it's an aloofness as well. It's like all this bother is a little bit beneath them, Actually, you know what? It's funny, actually. That's one thing I noticed. Do you remember when the Batman films came out? The what's the one for Joker? With the Christopher Nolan one. Dark Knight? For Dark Knight.
Dark Knight, yeah.
I remember, before I'd seen the film, it was obviously a massive film, big sort of cultural phenomenon thing at the time. I remember walking around, and I didn't see anybody walking around with like Batman t-shirts, but I saw loads of people walking around with Joker t-shirts. And I noticed that, and I thought, things are changing now. It's like, in the old days, it was very simple. You root for the good guys against the bad guys, and that's it. And it's kind of struck me, I thought, so are people thinking they've got more in common with somebody like the Joker now in 2006 or whatever that year that came out, rather than having something in common with, a billionaire who has a double life? It's like, probably.
But it could also have something to do with the fact that they printed Joker t-shirts and they didn't print Bruce Wayne t-shirts.
You mean it's another facet of a corporate machine? I can't believe it. See, my old trap that I fall into of reading way too much into everything has come to the fore again.
Oh, dear. Right. Well, how are you?
I'm all right.
I forgot we had to start the podcast.
Yeah. Well, it hasn't been too long, has it, since we recorded last? Hooray! Finally getting back into some kind of regularity, which is good after some turbulent times. What have I been up to since last time? Well, I've been playing the game a fair bit, which is great. So it's the first time I've really got my teeth into the game. I think the same for you as well.
Yeah. Over
the last few weeks. So that's been great, actually, getting back into it. Apart from that, not an awful lot, really. Just been, same old stuff. The COVID situation hasn't changed, so I'm not going to bother doing an update.
There is no need for an update.
Yes, thank God. No more. Only if something tumultuous happened. But no, it's been a pretty regular week and a bit, whatever it's been since we last spoke. Done a bit of home decorating. Mm-hmm. It's the early little hints of spring are coming through. So, doing all of that stuff. Had a spring clean, doing a bit of decorating, that kind of thing. Sensible, grown-up things.
Such an optimist.
Oh, yeah, the spring is a time of optimism.
Yeah, no, I'm still staring into the winter abyss.
That is your right as an Englishman.
The rights of spring. No, but what have I been up to? I've been desperately still trying to watch everything that's on Disney Plus as the timer ticks down to 0. And I watched a Pixar movie which completely passed me by. I think it must have come out during the sort of beginning of the pandemic or something, but because I didn't even know it existed, called Onward. I want to say it's called Onward. And I hadn't even heard about it before, and I just saw it there, and I thought, oh, that's a good Saturday afternoon tea time watching, and it was lovely. I don't know, have you heard of this one?
No, never heard of it.
No, exactly. So no, but it's about it's a fantasy film. It's set in the worlds of goblins and elves and things like that, but in a setting that you would recognize. It's in very much our modern day setting, but this is where these guys live, and they go on an adventure, and it's based on the ideas of people living out the ideas of going on a quest based on their favorite card and board games. So ties into the podcast.
Okay. But ours would just be Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, exactly. We would just reenact Lord of the Rings.
Some people do that, you know.
Well, we're not going to get involved. But it's a very nice, it's classic Pixar, as in it's very pleasant, it's very family friendly, yet it deals with the subject of loss, which is of course Pixar's favourite subject, but it does it so brilliantly and it's so heartfelt. So I highly recommend you check it. I don't want to say too much about it because I think because you still have Disney Plus, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I was actually counting through all of them, and I just realised how little I watch any of the things I've got subscriptions for. I need to reevaluate my life, John.
Well, that's quite extreme. Going through, I have too many subscriptions to I need to reevaluate my life.
Well, what else is there? During the pandemic, you got your subscriptions, you got your food orders, and that's it, right?
That's what they say, isn't it? As long as you've got your subscriptions.
That's it. That's prescriptions. So I
watched that. So I won't spoil any more about that, but I do recommend it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've not heard about it. Yeah, I'll put that on my ever growing list. So aside from the occasional Pixar movie, what else have you been up to?
Yeah, well, not a lot. Like you say, I have been playing the game, and in relation to the game, we get a lot of correspondence, and that's great. And I keep it coming, guys. We love to hear from you. But one subject has generated more than its fair share of emails, and you're going to hate me for bringing this up, but I feel like I need to because it's to do with the escape test.
Oh, God. When does the escape test happen? It's not that, is it?
It basically is. So basically...
John, we've covered this.
No, I know. But the thing is, I've had more than several emails about it, and...
More than several?
More than several.
That many? Okay.
At least. And I think because of this, and like I say, thank you, please do keep writing in. We do love to hear from you. But because of this, I have managed to find all the specific facts, all the different official correspondence about it. So I thought maybe it's wise just to quickly, and I swear it'll be quickly, just clarify the escape test timing.
Okay, I'm starting the stopwatch, John.
Okay, so basically...
Because it's not like us to ramble.
No, that's a fair point. Just to jog people's memories, should it require jogging, the escape test is from The Hunt for Gollum. No, it's not. It's from The Dead Marshes. And it features Gollum. And Gollum... You have to perform an escape test because it is written on Gollum's card and it's a forced effect. We're not going to go into what all the escape test is. Go back a couple of episodes and listen, or look at the card if you don't know. But the confusing thing is that this escape test happens, quote, at the end of the quest phase. So the discussion is, where exactly is that point? And then does that have any implications on other effects which are active until the end of the phase? Okay, so that's the backstory. So here's the deal. at the end of the quest phase, it involves one important fact, which is the timing of effect resolutions. Okay, and that is in rules clarification 1.37, which is the timing of effect resolution. And it says, when resolving multiple effects with a shared condition, players should use this order of resolution: passive abilities first, forced effects second, response actions third. Okay, that's the important bit. So when anything happens at the same time, passive effects happen first, then forced effects, then responses. Okay? Just remember that. So here we are in the quest phase. And this was all around, I've given Eowyn +1 willpower. I've triggered Faramir to give all my allies and heroes +1 willpower. Is that willpower still active when we get to Gollum's escape test? And I was saying no, and this is the reason why. Going back to that rule clarification, it says when resolving multiple effects with a shared condition. Now, the shared condition with Eowyn, Faramir, and Gollum's escape test is at the end of the phase. That's the condition. That's when these things happen. Okay? So you've given Eowyn +1 willpower, you've given all your allies +1 via Faramir, and those boosts are active until the end of the phase. Okay, and those are passive abilities. So those passive abilities have to come to an end before the forced effect of Gollum's escape test triggers, because the multiple effects has a shared condition.
That would it just have worked if it just said, instead of saying at the end of the quest phase, if it just said after the end of the quest phase and before travel,
yes, but then it would be a sort of mini phase. So the thing is, it happens.
But that is how we described it before.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
I know.
A mini phase.
It is kind of like that,
but it's not that. Okay.
Because any effect that you can trigger once per phase, you could only be able to do it once during the quest phase, and that's where it does happen. So if you treated it as a mini phase, you couldn't then trigger that effect again once per phase.
So are we still in the quest phase at this point?
Still in the quest phase. So let's say
So you trigger Faramir.
Yeah, then you're fine. But let's say you triggered Faramir earlier.
No, that's what I mean. You've triggered Faramir, yeah.
Previously.
Yeah.
Okay, then you...
Well, either way.
Right.
Why would you not just trigger Faramir, therefore, just at the very end during the escape test, and then that would also give +1 to all the questing as well?
You can absolutely do that, but then you couldn't have done it earlier.
But what I mean is, if you trigger Faramir's ability at any point in the quest phase,
yes,
any point, even during the escape test,
yes,
isn't that going to give everybody +1?
Yeah, no, but if you did it before the escape test, then the +1 wouldn't be active during the escape test.
Okay, so basically, Faramir can either give +1 to everyone questing or everybody doing the escape test.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay, and then I'm just going to read this one thing out, which came from Caleb Grace, who was like the senior designer on Lord of the Rings Living Card Game up until very recently. And someone asked him this specifically about what would happen if you'd sneak attack Gandalf in during the quest phase. Would Gandalf still be in play at the point of the escape test? Because sneak attack lasts until the end of the phase. And at the end of the phase, you have to return that ally back to your hand. Okay, and this is what he said. This is it verbatim, okay? Sneak attack creates a passive effect that forces you to return Gandalf to your hand at the end of the round. Passive effects in Lord of the Rings The Living Card Game are always checking the game state to see if they trigger, and resolve instantly when they do. If a passive effect and a forced effect, like Gollum's, share the same trigger, in this case the end of the quest phase, the passive effect must be resolved first before the forced effect has the opportunity to resolve. I'm afraid that means Gandalf will be returned to your hand before you resolve the escape test.
So Gandalf can never be used to sneak attack, or you can never sneak attack someone in to help out with the escape test. The Faramir one still gets me there, because what it says on Faramir's card is action, exhaust Faramir to choose a player. Each character controlled by that player gets +1 willpower until the end of the phase. Right, first thing I'm going to do, at the beginning of the quest phase, I'm triggering Faramir.
Yeah.
Every one of your characters, and I'm going to choose me.
Yeah.
Every one of my characters gets +1 willpower until the end of the phase.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you commit people to the quest, and they'll get +1.
That creates a passive.
So no, hold on.
ability.
Let me see. Let me see if I've got this.
Okay.
Let me as the idiot newcomer guy. Let's see if I've got this. So Faramir.
Yep.
So you trigger that, right?
Yep.
That means that everybody commits to the quest. They get +1.
Yeah.
You do the quest, fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you're coming to the end of the quest phase.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you have this thing of passive, forced. What was it? What were the three things?
Passive, forced, response.
Okay. So what is the definition of a passive? What's Faramir's one? It says action, exhaust Faramir to choose a player.
It gives everyone a passive. A passive ability means that there's an ability which is going on which doesn't require a trigger. So basically, by giving everyone +1, they've all got an extra ability of +1 willpower. And that just exists. It just exists until it doesn't anymore. And there is a trigger for it to stop happening. And the trigger for it to stop happening is the end of the phase.
Yeah.
And because it's a passive ability on everyone, the end of the phase means when that happens, all your passive abilities stop, which are triggered by the end of the phase. And then the forced effect of Gollum also triggers. It's the same trigger.
But then how does that work with an action window? So if you've got an action window,
yeah,
you've already had the end of a quest phase.
Yeah.
If you try and trigger Faramir at that point, he doesn't do anything. Because there's nothing to stop that there's nothing to make that passive effect stop.
Oh,
by the way, I hate breaking down these rules, by the way, because then you just go into like psycho, pedantic rules mode, which is the thing I don't like about the game.
Does it say till the end of the phase or to the end of the quest phase?
The end of a phase. You can do it any phase.
Then weirdly, probably, don't make me go down this rabbit hole. Weirdly, if you were to trigger Faramir during the escape test, there is a high chance that people's willpower would last till the end of the travel phase. I mean, it wouldn't do you any good, but I think that's probably what would happen.
No, well, what phase are you in at that point? You're not in the travel phase.
No, but you're in the yeah, but you're absolutely right. There is a
there's a gap here. There is a gap here.
Okay, but just
I think the way to do it is to figure out which cards can actually do something in each situation. Sneak attack, Faramir, whatever, and then just have a list to see what does each one do.
Anything that you trigger during the quest phase that creates a passive ability that ends at the end of the quest phase will stop before Gollum's escape test triggers.
Okay. So you can't use... So what it means is you can't use any special powers at all for the... Anything that ends at the end of a phase will not work during the escape test.
No, it will,
because the end of the phase has already happened.
Well, no, because you're after it. You see, there's that escape. It's you. That's what I've said.
Well, you're not after it. You're at the end of it because you said that Gollum's forced effect. That's still at the end of the quest phase. But you're just doing things in order, right?
Yeah, you're doing things in order, but in a way, it's if you like, then it's extending the end of the quest phase because it is definitely adding an action window for sure. So let's look at it as a timeline. You've quested, you've boosted people, giving everyone a passive ability. You've got to the end of the quest phase. So the first thing that happens is all your passive abilities come to an end. So no more +1 for anyone. And your sneak attack Gandalf comes back to your hand. Then the forced effect of Gollum triggers, which his forced effect is, now do this whole other thing. Okay? So you sort of branch off and go off and do this whole other thing. That's his forced effect. During that forced effect, there is an action window which allows you to play actions. So you could, at that point, boost your guys who are taking part in the escape test. My only and then
listener, you still with us?
But the only thing which then becomes a puzzle is when would anything that is till the end of the phase at that point end? Would it end there and then, or would it end actually at the end of the next phase? But please don't get bogged down on that. The point.
That's what we've been doing for the last 10 minutes. Going through a festering bog of rule confusion.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know. I think what you're saying kind of makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. I tried. I thought
you know what always gets me about this? I think this is the one frustration that I have with the game is how do people know all this? You have to go online and search things. You have to write to the makers of the game and get emails and all this. I would say my honest view, and this will be hugely unpopular with loads of people, so if you're offended by this kind of thing, please close your ears or ignore I said it. I would say just play it how it makes sense to you.
Oh no, for sure.
And just be done and be happy with that, and don't feel any guilt.
It's a cooperative
like
game.
Anything wrong.
You should enjoy this game however you wish to enjoy it. But I know that a lot of people. I'm a big stickler to the rules. I mean, the rules are there for a reason, and actually, I like the fact that it makes your brain hurt. But as we said at the time, this particular effect is a disaster of how they designed it. It's an absolute mess. I was going to say, there are official rulings. I just read them out. but
they still don't make any sense to me, to my simple brain.
Well,
I'm sure. Is it Caleb? Is that the guy's name?
Caleb, yeah.
Caleb. You know, he sounds like a pretty smart guy. It probably makes perfect sense. And if he was hearing me talk now, he'd just think, you idiot. I explained it to you. How are you not getting this? That's probably what he's thinking. So, if he was ever to hear my ridiculous conclusions to what he said.
Well, I feel so bad because I thought, well, this is easy. I've written this a good 5 times now. I think this is clear now. And now I think I've made it even messier than it was before.
Well, let's break it down then.
No. We're done.
Kidding.
We're done.
All right. If you use sneak attack,
you
can't do it in the quest phase and then have that sneak attack person still around. He goes off. He or she goes back before the escape test. Faramir, likewise, you can use them either to boost everyone in the quest phase or boost everyone in the escape test.
Yeah.
And then probably similar-ish things for any other cards, which I can't think of off the top of my head that might do something similar.
Eowyn.
Yeah, you can do Eowyn either to boost her in the quest or in the escape test.
Yeah.
It's an either or. Basically, you're splitting it into 2. They are kind of like mini phases.
Yeah.
You can't do one thing that goes over both.
Yeah.
It's one or t'other.
Yeah.
Take your pick.
But they're both in the same phase.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Forget that. Let's not get bogged down in the words. You've said the words for logical people. For the idiots like me, not idiots, I beg your pardon. Anyone who's like me, who would think more in terms of, just tell me what I need to do kind of thing. That's how you treat it if you want to follow the rules.
I think you've nailed it.
Yes. Either I've nailed it or you're just going to patronise me to get me to shut up now.
No, I genuinely think you nailed it. And I think we can put it to bed now.
Yes,
I think.
yes.
But like I say,
we're going to get more emails.
We might get even more. I thought this might close the lid on it. I think I might have opened Pandora's box again.
You know what, John? I think it's helped me. So next time I play that, I'm going to know exactly what to do. So let's move on.
Moving on
from that quest, and let's move on to another quest.
Yes. Ah, nice bridge. So, yes, let's do that. So, today is a spoiler episode. So we will be discussing a quest, and the quest we'll be discussing is Return to Mirkwood, the final quest in the Shadows of Mirkwood cycle. So if you are trying to avoid spoilers and you haven't played that quest, it's probably best just to skip the rest of this episode. But if you don't mind spoilers, or you have played it, we're going to start discussing the final stretch from the first cycle. How exciting is that?
It's pretty exciting.
Okay, yeah. Return to Mirkwood. Let's do
you know
it.
What? Do you know what I've got with me?
Is it the insert?
I've got the insert sheet.
Okay. Well,
it's a short. Thankfully, it's a short one. Mercifully, shall I read it for you?
Oh, please.
Okay, this is what everyone's been waiting for. Okay. Return to Mirkwood, difficulty level 7, to be discussed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so after cornering and capturing Gollum in the Dead Marshes, the heroes must now escort the creature north through Mirkwood Forest so that he can be held and interrogated at King Thranduil's palace. I've just said that correctly.
I think you have.
The journey will not be easy. Oh, the journey will not be easy, however. Journey will not be easy. However, the journey will not be easy, however. Mirkwood is... There's so many ways to cut a cookie. I love it. Mirkwood is always a dangerous place.
Oh.
The Dark Lord's forces are eager to take Gollum for their own purposes, and Gollum himself is eager to escape. Okay, then it just says which cards to play the quest with. And then there's just one extra piece of information, which is about guarding Gollum.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, during this quest, and there's no spoilers here, but you'll see this on literary card 1A of the quest in a minute. During this quest, players are instructed to guard the Gollum objective card. At the beginning of the game, the players choose one player to guard Gollum. This player places the Gollum objective card in front of him to represent that he is guarding it. Various effects in the encounter and quest deck, as well as the effect on Gollum itself, interact with the player who is guarding Gollum. Itself or himself, you know. The default seems to be him, even though it should be him, her, whatever.
Oh,
you know.
yeah, no.
But Gollum's it.
No, well,
Gollum itself.
in all seriousness, because I mean, this is a serious note. Actually, I think with this game very much defaults to him and his and he when it's talking about a player.
We discussed this right at the beginning,
yeah, and I think it is a mistake from the designer, but we do just read the cards verbatim, so it is not of the opinion of Lord of the Rings. No, but we just read the cards as they are. But yeah.
Exactly. Okay, but Gollum in it, a bit harsh.
Yeah.
Once a player is guarding Gollum, that player cannot relinquish the responsibility to another player unless card text allows, or in some cases mandates a change. The text on the Gollum objective itself allows the players to choose a new guard at the end of each game round. We'll see that in a minute. The Gollum objective has hit points, and it's possible that he will be destroyed during the quest. If Gollum is destroyed or leaves play for any reason, the players have lost the game. Gollum cannot be used to attack, defend, or commit to a quest. Otherwise, Gollum is considered an ally character under the control of the player guarding him. Card effects that affect allies do affect him, and any attachment that can be played on an ally can be played on Gollum. That's all it says. So,
see, that's interesting because I'm going to come to something because I didn't read that insert and I thought I was being so clever with one of my tactics.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, that's the end of the insert sheet, so we can move. So we can see what your tactic was shortly. Okay, so let's move on to the cards. Shall I do the honours?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so you get 4 quest cards here. 1A. Quest card 1 is called Through the Forest. Having captured Gollum, you must now escort him through Mirkwood Forest for interrogation at Thranduil's palace. Setup. Search the encounter deck for Gollum. Choose a player to guard Gollum at the start of the game and place Gollum in front of that player. Then shuffle the encounter deck, reveal 1 card per player from the encounter deck and add it to the staging area. Okay. So is this a good time to have a look at the Gollum card?
Yeah, so we find Gollum out of the encounter deck and we chuck him in front of the... we choose a player. Now, we should say that there's a lot in this quest about choosing a player to guard Gollum, and you'll see the effects on Gollum in a second. And there is a lot which immediately becomes apparent that it would change between playing a single-player solo game and a 2-player game. So for this replay that myself and Em did, we did play both solo and we did play a 2-player game as well. So I think when we're talking about the quest, we will jump backwards and forwards between our experiences. But so we take Gollum out of the encounter deck and we pick a player to guard him. And Gollum says this.
So he's a creature.
And
Gollum's unique, obviously. It's not given a willpower, an attack or defense score. So it's not 0, it's not 0. It's there's just a dash, just doesn't exist.
No.
And 5 hit points, as was described on the sheet. Damage from undefended attacks against you must be dealt to Gollum. So whoever's got the Gollum objective, any undefended attacks, that's going straight on to Mr. Gollum here. If Gollum is destroyed, or if the player guarding Gollum is eliminated, the players have lost the game. Okay, doesn't seem too bad.
Mm-hmm.
Forced. At the end of each round, raise the threat of the player guarding Gollum by 3. By 3. Then, that player may choose a new player to guard Gollum.
Yeah.
So you can straight away see there that your threat is going to go up pretty rapidly when you've got Gollum.
Yeah, and this is why I wanted to immediately say that we wanted to test this playing solo and test it in 2-player, because immediately, if you're playing solo, the first thing you think is, what? My threat is going to go up by 4 every round, and I have no way of getting around that. I mean, obviously you have ways of reducing your own threat, but you have no ways of getting around that by getting rid of Gollum, which immediately becomes apparent if you're playing a 2-player game, that you can go, my threat's getting high, you're taking him. Sorry, you're taking it.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very different experience in some ways, wasn't it, between 1 and 2 player?
Oh, yeah, no, completely. And I think this is something we should consider doing more when we see these quests, which you can see the way they're designed is a little bit more skewed towards multiplayer. Then I think we should definitely make an effort to play 2-player, because I think it does change the way you look at the quest for sure. Because, like I say, the first, you don't even have to turn over quest card 1 at this stage. You just know my threat is going up by 4. Okay, I've got 4 quest cards. All I need to do is get through this thing, because I am not going to have very many rounds. So you already know your strategy straight off the bat in a solo game.
Yeah, quite.
But saying that, let's flip over the card.
Okay, so you flip it over, 1B, through the forest. You see straight away that you need 12 progress tokens to get through this. And there's no special instruction there. Just a bit of text that says, Mirkwood is always a dangerous place, but it's even worse with Gollum.
You see that on the sign?
Yeah.
Welcome to Mirkwood. It's even worse with Gollum.
There's another sign which says, welcome to Mirkwood. Even better without Gollum. Cup half full. Calf half full. No. Anyway, between the outburst tantrums and the flying provisions.
Yes.
Weren't they an 80s band?
They should have been.
I was flying pickets. Between the outburst tantrums and flying provisions, you are not afforded a moment's peace. Sounds like a nightmare. So, that's your first quest card.
But, right, a couple of things to say straight away about this. One, I love the fact that this cycle ends with us returning to Mirkwood. Quite literally, it's the name of the quest.
Yeah.
It's just a beautiful bookend from that moment when you picked up the core set and you played that introductory quest, a passage through Mirkwood. And, you know, we talked about that first quest, that it's not just a walk in the park or forest, but it's, you know, there are some nasty beasties in there, and it does teach you the game. And the fact that this cycle comes back round, and I think actually also, if you remember the flavor text right on that first card, it was King Thranduil was sending us out with a message for Lady Gladriel. You know, It really, really does all tie back together, and it closes off this cycle that you have to go back through the forest with everything that you've learnt and a bigger party, because you have all your new player cards now. And it just ramps up the difficulty. I'm just going to say this straight away. This quest is tough. They've gone, yeah, but Mirkwood was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah. 13 months to the day. Probably. Do you know what? It probably is for me. That's That's amazing. It probably is around 13 months ago I properly started playing this game on my own.
It's meant to be.
There you go. Yeah, well, let's come back to the difficulty, because I had some not strange, I had some very differing experiences of this quest. But yeah, we'll maybe discuss that at the end. But yes, but this card, this is just, you need 12 to get through it. You don't know what's coming next. You want to try and get through it.
Well, should we talk about some of the things which are coming next?
In terms of
the encounters.
Oh, yes.
Because you say, it's nothing to it. Just 12 progress.
A mere 12.
This quest mixes in, obviously, the encounter cards, which are from Return to Mirkwood, but also 2 killer sets from the core set. Walking around this forest, you might come across a marsh adder. Sure. You might come across a hill troll. And don't get me started about the wargs.
You and your wargs. Yeah, there are some horrible beasts in this. There's a couple of all right ones, but there are a couple of...
Yeah, but of course, if you can't talk about Mirkwood without mentioning spiders.
True.
And, they started out the whole game with a big boss of Ungoliant Spawn. Ungoliant Spawn in Return to Mirkwood is just something, it's just Ungoliant Spawn. Dealt with that. That's nothing compared to what else is hiding out there.
You know what? That is a great point. That's a really good point, because when you play, the first quest, when you first think, you think, how am I going to defeat Ungoliant Spawn? You have to come up with loads of ways you have to cook up some ways to defeat it. It can be a really tricky part of a game. And you're right. You have gained all that experience. You've got some, more knowledge of the game. You've got some more cards, probably. You know what you're doing a bit more. And it actually, that's a really good barometer for how far you've come. Because you're right. Ungoliant Spawn is still a nasty enemy, but you don't think, oh, God, it's game over.
No. And there are 2 hill trolls in there as well. Which
can be game over.
Which can be game over. And I think that's an important point about this quest, is it's very much about maintaining your threat level. Because let's just talk about it from a solo perspective to start with. Your threat is going up by 4 every round. So if you have any encounter cards which are going to increase that threat more, and the hill troll is one of those, just a reminder that if any damage beyond the hit points of a character who's defending the hill troll has to be added to your threat. So you just cannot afford anything to increase your threat more than you're already coping with.
Yeah, I came a cropper of this on one of the games. I'd completely forgotten that effect, and I think I had a Snowborn Scout, 1 defense, 1 hit point. Chucked him onto the bus, and suddenly threat's gone up by 4.
Yeah,
because the hill troll hits for 6, and I'd forgotten. I thought, oh God, okay, that's a couple of those. That's the end of the game.
That's the end of that then.
So I think that hill troll. Did we want to dive into the enemies now?
Yeah, sure. Let's dot around. That's good.
Okay, so I think. Well, talking of spiders, I think there was one which you particularly wanted to mention. Then. After we spoke of Ungoliant Spawn. Well, there's 2 other spiders. It's the return of the king spider, who we've seen before. Yeah. Let's face it, nowadays that's just like you're having a small house spider, which you need to get rid of with your slipper.
Yeah, king.
But I'll let you read out the other lady.
Well, this is the our new bad spider, which comes with the Return to Mirkwood set, and it is Atacop. Baker's man.
We can't be the only people to have that.
No. Which I believe is a reference to The Hobbit, but I didn't look it up.
It does ring a bell.
Yeah, it does. Well, actually, I tell you what, I say I didn't look it up. It's written on the card. So I'm just going to I'll just jump straight to the quote. It says, Atacop, won't you stop? Bilbo Baggins, The Hobbit. I don't know if that's just referring to who he is.
Yeah. That's how he signs his name.
Okay, so look, Atacop, it's an enemy. And it has an engagement of 44. It's nice and high. I mean, we know our threat is going up and up and up, but you can definitely keep this guy in the staging area for a while, so that's at least something. So, engagement cost of 44. It's got threat of 2, hits for 8. Oh my god. Yeah, you definitely do not want to be engaging this guy. Defense of 4 and 6 hit points. So, tough spider. Okay, it's a creature.
Horrible.
It's a creature, and it's a spider, and it has a forced effect. Oh no. At the beginning of the encounter phase, Atacop automatically engages the player guarding Gollum, regardless of his threat.
Ouch.
Stony silence.
So one player.
In solo, forget that 44. In fact, in multiplayer, forget that 44. It's just coming.
Yeah.
It might as well have an engagement cost of 50. It doesn't matter. Because it's just coming for you. If you've got Gollum in front of you, it's coming for you. And that's actually an important distinction, that you can bounce Atacop around the table by moving Gollum. So if you move Gollum at the end of the round, Atacop will then slide across the table when you get to the beginning of the combat phase. But it's certainly never staying in the staging area.
No. And it should be worth pointing out, I think we both had this experience, and I think we saw this in 2-player as well one time. If you get this off the bat, first one off the encounter deck.
Oh my god.
And you haven't got any resource to get any allies out or anything, you've lost a hero, basically, from the first go. And you're probably going to lose another one next go because you're going to get one less resource to spend. So, seeing this guy, or lady, I should say, they are all ladies, aren't they? You said before.
I think
Didn't you say that before?
Yeah, no, I did say that, but based on nothing. No, based on
Shelob.
Based on the writings of like Ungoliant and Ungoliant Spawn, and then the named Ungoliant Spawn is Shelob. In Tolkien's work, spiders are nearly always referred to as she, so that's what I'm going by. So
okay, so she's just horrible. I mean, even if you've got a strong handout, you can. Well, we saw this in the 2-player, didn't we? When I was a little bit stronger on the fighting than you were.
Yeah.
Managed to chuck a couple under the bus for Atacop and managed to take her down. But I guess we'll come to what cards we use, etc. a bit later. But horrible, nasty enemy. You don't want to see this one early on, or preferably not at all.
Not at all. But there's loads of them as well, isn't there?
Well, at least 3 we found out.
No, but what is important to note, though, is that it has a threat of 2, but it's not staying in the staging area. So it's only going to be in the staging area for that once it's revealed. It'll only be there for that exact time, and then it's coming at you. So I think what's important to note, then, is that there are 12 progress to get past this first card, but there isn't much which is from an enemy perspective, which is going to contribute threat. That nearly all comes from the locations, and there are a lot of locations.
Apart from, it is worth just remembering on Ungoliant Spawn, so even though we don't think it's as harsh as it used to be, it still hits for 5 and still has 9 hit points. They're still brutal enemy. But also, this can stitch you up on this particular quest, because that one has got a threat of 3.
Oh, wow.
But also, don't forget its when revealed effect, which is each character currently committed to the quest gets -1 willpower until the end of the phase. So suddenly you got 3 threat up there, plus you're minusing 1 from all the characters you got there. So suddenly your threat you can fail questing and your threat can go up, and that suddenly puts you out of control.
Yeah.
So, but worth bearing in mind, you don't really want to see Ungoliant Spawn either. Even it's not as harsh as Atacop, but it's still a horrible enemy.
But that's such a statement. You don't really want to see Ungoliant Spawn. No. I'll second that. But I would say actually that, I mean, we're going to dot around, I think, but in your deck, you absolutely need cancellation. You cannot go into this quest without cancellation. There are so many when revealed effects, which that one, for instance, can really stitch you up. The treacheries will come on to, I think, in a minute, when I want to talk about the theme, the Gollum theme, because they are all golden.
Yeah.
But let's just say, do you want to talk about any of the locations, by the way? I didn't actually highlight many of them. I mean...
Yeah, so I think... so it's interesting that how many of the cards on the locations are to do with multiplayer, actually.
Yeah.
In fact, I think maybe all of them. But so what have we got? We've got the Spider's Ring.
Yeah.
That's quite a nasty one. It's because it's got a threat of 3. So that's a pretty nasty one on this kind of quest to have in the staging area. You only require 2 to get through it, and it's a forest location, but it says, while the Spider's Ring is the active location, the player guarding Gollum cannot change.
Yeah.
So
there
you've got
go.
to really bear that in mind. So if you want to travel there and get rid of that 3 out of the staging area, you've really got to plan and manage what you're doing with Gollum. Otherwise, you can just suddenly go bop, 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 and get knocked out very quickly.
Oh, that's beautifully thematic as well, isn't it? That you're in the spider's
stuck in a
ring,
web.
So you're stuck. The webs are around you. You've got to keep hold of Gollum. You've got to keep hold of him and get through there. So only you can get through there. And then once you're through the spider's ring, you can chuck it elsewhere.
Awesome. Or chuck it elsewhere.
Hey!
Which brings us on to the Wood Elf Path. I'll just read this one quickly as well. This one's only got a threat of 1. You require 3 to go through. I love the artwork here. Again, light through murky forest. Sucker for it. Response. After the players travel to Wood Elf Path, the player guarding Gollum may choose a new player to guard him.
Yeah.
So this one's actually got quite a decent effect. Yeah. And why this is important is on Gollum's card, it says at the end of each round, raise the threat, but then also you can pass it to another player. But you have to raise your threat by 3, well, probably 4, until you pass it across. So this can allow you in the middle of a round to pass it across. So if you did have something like the Spider's Ring, which prevented you from doing it, and you successfully quested through that, you could then travel to the Wood Elf Path and then pass across Gollum.
Yeah. And that can be vital. The thing is with these locations, we played it twice together, but I played the majority of the time solo, and I find that the locations, their effects didn't really affect me because they're nearly all about multiplayer, like you say, but there is enough threat being placed in that staging area that they could really stitch you up if you can't quest enough to get through them and get in and out of locations. I mean, actually, I'll tell you what was really useful for me in my deck was I was playing with both Strider's Path from Lore and the West Road Traveller from Spirit, both of which in slightly different ways allow you to swap out locations, either ones which are in the staging area or when revealed, and it bypasses any travel effects, and that was really useful. Because I think the Brownlands are in this set, aren't they? Which that has a threat of 5, but only takes 1 progress to get through it. So if that got revealed, you could immediately just bounce that straight out of the.
Oh, that's super useful for that. Yeah, it's got the Brownlands and the East Bite, which is kind of like the opposite of that, which has only got 1 threat but takes 6 to go through.
And you have to travel there.
So again, that could be useful to swap that out.
Oh, that's what I was doing actually. That's a very good point. That's because you have to travel there, so that would go into the active location, and then if another location gets revealed the next round, I would just play Strider's Path and swap the East Bite back into the staging area, which would move the when revealed location as the active location, so it would bypass any travel effects if there were any, but also more importantly, just put that 1 threat back into the staging area. So that was an invaluable card.
And it was really interesting how different it kind of worked out in 2-player than it did in 1-player. So for example, East Bite in 1-player, yes, you can manage it for something like that. I didn't have Lore. I had a Leadership and Spirit deck. So that was focused on sort of reducing threat and questing, a couple of other bits and bobs. But so something like the East Bite wasn't a huge... it might delay you maybe 1 more round, which you've got to manage, but that was it. But in 2-player, because you're getting more enemies out, and I was a little bit more focused because I had 2 leadership heroes, a little bit more focused on having to fight. Suddenly, the East Bite became a real problem.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting to see how the different dynamics played out. Where using the same kind of cards, but just because you've got 2 players, you get the extra card out every time. It was really, it was. It was really fun to do that. Actually,
that first time we played, we basically had about 6 locations in the staging area within about the first 2 rounds. It was like, okay,
it got crazy.
Okay, like I said, I do want to discuss the treacheries, but I think let's move on to the next card and sort of see how the quest sort of pans out and how that kind of affects your strategy a little bit of how you get through the game.
Sure. Just before we do that, should I just read the other 2 new locations?
If you want to, if you think they're valid.
Yeah, I think so, because, there's one, which is the Woodman's Glade.
Okay.
Which has got a threat of 2, only takes 2 to go through. It looks very nice. It looks very glade-like. It's like the sun is shining through shafts of light onto this kind of hut in the forest. And the travel effect is the player guarding Gollum must exhaust a hero he controls to travel there. So that's
bypass that if you can.
But the responses after exploring Woodman's Glade reduce the threat of each player not guarding Gollum by 2.
So if you're playing solo, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Yeah. So when I played, in my deck I had a couple of the old staples: Lorien Guide, Northern Tracker. And playing solo, it was quite tricky, especially for Tracker, to get him out because he costs 4.
Yeah.
And you have to go through this quest quickly, and you have to be spending your resource on some other things. So it was really hard to save up to get them out. In 2-player, Northern Tracker became absolutely invaluable and was so useful, and as was Lorien Guide, actually. And this one, for example, Woodman's Glade, you could just leave it in the staging area and not have to exhaust a hero, just for a couple of rounds if you've got a tracker, but then you get the benefit of response of the explored location. So, that was interesting to see.
So in solo, that is so painful, that location.
Well, I mean, that's what I mean. So in solo, that was only really possible in 2-player, much more so than in solo, which is kind of counterintuitive when you think about it, but that's the reality of it. That's why it's so interesting to see it in 2-player.
Yeah,
have a dynamic change. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's say you do manage to get through all these nasty locations, and I mean, I try to brush off these enemies, but there are some nasty ones out there. But let's say you do manage to get your 12 progress onto this first card without threating out. See, you think you're listening to this thinking, well, that's easy enough. It's like, no, your threat's going up by 4 every time.
At least.
Yes, at
minimum.
So the number of times I didn't get off this first card is, well, it's a lot. So let's say we do get through and we get to stage 2. What does it say?
Okay, stage 2, 2A. Okay, now don't be disheartened, listener. It's called Escape Attempt. Don't worry, it's something different. Please don't turn off. Stay on. Okay. Escape Attempt. It says,
don't write
as soon as he thinks that no one is watching, Gollum attempts to slip his bonds and escape. And there's a picture of him holding the rope and biting it, and also holding his foot to get his foot close, because his foot and his hand is obviously bound. He's trying to bite it off. It's very Gollum-y kind of thing to do. Anyway, flip that over. You see, you only require 3 to get through this.
Piece of cake.
But what it says, the player guarding Gollum cannot commit characters to this quest. Brackets, unless, or what do our American pals say? Parentheses.
Let's not get involved.
No, it's fine. I'm spreading the, I've got nothing against that. I like the nuance in the different dialects. It's fantastic.
No. I've got nothing against Americanisms. It's just, there's a chance you're wrong.
Oh, that's true. I've made terrible assumptions on this podcast before. Okay, brackets. Unless he is... Okay, let me read that again. So the player guarding Gollum cannot commit characters to this quest unless he is the only player remaining in the game. So if you're playing solo, you obviously are. So this doesn't really apply to you.
Me?
It is important. Yes, if you are playing solo.
Okay,
correct, yes.
Yeah.
Glad we cleared that up.
It's very specific.
But yes. But then it does say, if the players quest unsuccessfully, Gollum escapes and the players have lost the game. Simple as that.
Yeah.
So when you're playing one player, this doesn't actually make that much difference. It's really a continuation of your previous one. You just got a quest for another 3, but you just can't fail the quest. Apart from that, it's the same. You're in the same situation.
Do you know what happened the first time I played this?
You failed questing?
I was fine. I was questing along fine. I went, oh, this one, easy enough. I basically had all the thoughts you just vocalized. First card off the deck for that questing round, Brown lands. Threat of 5, couldn't get through it. Gollum escaped.
So long, sucker.
Yeah, so there you go.
The old rascal.
The villain.
The old villain. But 2-player, then woe betide. This is a whole different dynamic again. When we were playing 2-player again, we knew this was coming. Obviously we'd played it a few times, and we did not succeed on our first go when we played 2-player. No. But we obviously it's coming, so you've got to plan for it a bit. And interesting to see how the further cards develop on this as well. So
okay, well, let's say we do get through it, because actually it's not that difficult, because you especially if you know it's coming. I mean, that first go, I was flummoxed by it, but there you go.
Okay, and then so quest card 3 then. Is called To the Elven King's Halls.
Oh, I love this. It's so evocative.
It's so evocative. Everything about this is evocative. The artwork is evocative. You know what? This is one of the rare occasions where, you know how on the quest cards it's got like the muted monochrome on one side and it's got the colour version on the other.
Yeah.
This is one of the few occasions where I think the monochrome one is possibly even more powerful than the colour one.
It's amazing.
I love
absolutely amazing. Yeah. In fact, it's funny you should say that, because I was just looking at the card as you were talking. I was going, oh, I've got it turned over. I've got it the wrong side facing up. I haven't. I just love that side 3A. It's like, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it really works. It really works. Even more so than the colour one, which is also great. But yeah, that's a cracker. And who's done this one? Oh goodness, my eyesight's failing me. Timo Karbula.
Let's not go there.
Yeah, you're probably right. I'm going to make another wrong assumption here. I'm not going to play Guess the Nationality after the last debacle I got myself into. But Timo? That's Karbula, isn't it? Not Karhula.
I can't read that. Have you seen my eyes?
It says Timo. So Timo, that is great. If you're listening, that is fantastic work, Timo. Okay. Have you seen my eyes?
If only you could see what I've seen with your eyes.
If you could...
It's from
it's all gone a bit Matrix.
It's from Blade Runner. It's one of the most beautiful quotes.
Oh, of course.
If only you could see what I have seen with your eyes.
Oh. If only you could see what I have seen. Which bit's that from?
It's when Rutger Hauer, Roy, meets...
Not too many spoilers, but
meets the guy
meets the guy
quite literally made his eyes.
Yes. Okay, yeah. Oh, I recall.
Oh, what a scene. What a film. Let's not go down that route.
If anyone hasn't seen Blade Runner, watch Blade Runner. And if anyone hasn't listened to the Blade Runner soundtrack, listen to the Blade Runner soundtrack. That's my advice for people today.
Do you know what? I think that's the best advice you've given for many a year.
And then, of course, the question is, which version of Blade Runner? Oh, God.
Okay.
The director's cut or the final cut? One of those two. That's it.
Yep.
None of the others. Yeah.
Yep.
They'll do.
Yep.
Either one of those will do.
Although I do have a soft spot for the original because I grew up with it. It's fine. Right, move on.
No. It's still good. It's still great. If you're going to watch it, watch the director's cut or the final cut. That's what.
Yes. In fact, the best way to watch it is to work backwards. Watch the final.
Just watch one.
Watch the final cut.
You don't have to watch 4 of them.
Realize it's incredible.
It's just brilliant.
And then if you're really into filmmaking and the history of film, see where it started. And I said we shouldn't talk about it. Let's move on.
See, but you say that, but it's a cracker. Again, I've used that word twice. It's for me. I'm a big Philip K. Dick fan.
Me too.
And Blade Runner, in a weird way, it's not. Some of the themes are fantastic. The story is actually not what the film's about, in my opinion.
No, of course not.
The story is a fairly basic one. It's just very thematic, but just as a work of cinema, it's just
It's a masterpiece.
The most amazing places to be for a couple of hours.
It's insanely good.
Yeah.
It's possibly my favourite film of all time.
Dun, dun, dun. This is why you didn't want to go there.
On any given Sunday. That's not my favourite.
On any given Sunday. The Al Pacino one. when he's the football coach. That's a good film. Good film.
Yeah, it is a good film. No, but seriously, I mean, I absolutely love it. But of course, my favourite film changes with my mood, and as should everybody's. You should never have a definitive favourite film of all time.
Well, do you know what I think separates the real masterful ones? This goes for music and everything. Whilst you're watching it, or whilst you're listening to it, whatever it is you're doing, if at that point you think this is the best ever, then it's in that kind of top level.
It's in that bracket.
If it makes you feel like that,
it's in that bracket. Stroke parentheses. I can't say that word.
That's why you didn't want to go there.
Okay, so we like the artwork.
Okay. The artwork's
Good work,
great.
Timo.
Good work, Timo. So, back to Lord of the Rings world. It says, having thwarted Gollum's escape attempt, you tighten his rope and push on through Mirkwood to Thranduil's palace. Okay, so you flip that over, and you see that you require 7 to get through here. There's only one small sentence on the text, and it says, very simply, the player guarding Gollum cannot play cards from his hand.
Good grief.
So here, when we played 2-player, like the previous one, in fact, this one particularly, we had to really be tactical about what was going on. We had to be aware of what each other was doing. We had to talk more, and we had to really plan this out.
Yeah.
When you're playing 1 player, you just can't play any cards.
No.
And that's it. And that is an absolute stitch-up. So you've got to make sure that you're ready before you get to this card to get through the 7 quest and survive whatever's out there and hope you're not going to get something to absolutely stitch you up off the encounter deck.
Yeah, or if you're me and you play it for the first time, or rather get to this card for the first time, because the first time I played it, I didn't get off stage 1. Actually, the first 3 times I didn't get off stage 1. Then I sailed through stage 1 and stage 2 and got completely surprised by this card, because it was the first time I'd seen it for years. First card off the deck, Atacop. I had no ready allies at all.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. Oh, Gollum.
No, so I had to sacrifice Bilbo or Denethor.
How? They weren't ready.
No, I had no ready allies.
Oh, no, ready allies.
Yeah, so I couldn't sacrifice an ally, basically, for Atacop. I had to kill a hero. Because I couldn't do it undefended, because it would kill Gollum.
Yeah.
So, basically 2 more rounds and everyone was dead. Because I couldn't play any cards out of my hand to stop him.
You can't cancel anything. You can't do anything.
Can't do anything.
So you got to make sure. So be prepared, Lord Baden-Powell. You got to dib and all that, whatever he said. And you got to. So first time you play it, yes, that's an absolute stitch up. But obviously, once you've done it once, you know it's there.
Yeah.
Make sure you plan for it.
Yeah.
Now, the fact that you can't play any more allies out is one thing. The fact that you can't cancel anything is something else.
Yeah.
So, if you get a treachery out at this point, which is going to be just sod's law, and, that could that could just lose you the game. Straight away.
Well, is it time then? Is it time? I've got them in my hand. Please tell me it's time. Can we go through some of these treacheries?
It's time for treachery.
Oh my goodness! I mean, we won't go through the treacheries that you've already seen, because there are some pretty nasty ones from the old sets anyway. But there are some treacheries, and they are all, by the way, beautifully thematic about Gollum just being, a villain, annoying, mischievous villain.
All the orcs in Mordor are going to hear us.
Yeah, so
it's like that, isn't it?
So if you go back to the insert or to quest card 1B, where it says, between the outbursts, tantrums, and the flying provisions, you are not afforded a moment's peace. And that's basically represented with these treacheries is Gollum causing chaos. So I'm going to go straight in for the big guns because this one is just insane. This is Gollum's anguish, and it's a treachery, and it's a type tantrum.
That's a great type,
isn't it?
It's not quite item.
It's up there.
But tantrum.
And it says this: when revealed, raise the threat of the player guarding Gollum by 8. 8.
8.
That player must choose a new player to guard Gollum if able. Now, of course, I mean, the first few times I was playing solo, so I am the only person guarding Gollum. An increase of 8 is, I mean, you just literally have to cancel it. I mean, I'll tell you a quick story regarding this card, and this is my second game. Now, my deck started out with a starting threat of 26. 26. I mean, I knew you need to start with a low starting threat. Your threat's going up by 4 every time. You need to keep your threat low. I threated out in 2 rounds.
In 2 rounds from 26.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I'll quickly go through it. It won't take me long. So round 1. At the beginning, you may remember crest card 1A, you have to reveal a card from the deck before you even get started. There was a King Spider, I think, and then in the first round of questing, Mirkwood Bats came out. They surged into a location. I travelled to the location. So basically, by the combat phase of round 1, I was engaged with the King Spider and the Mirkwood Bats. Okay?
That's not too bad.
Well,
actually, you don't want enemies at the beginning.
No.
You don't want them at the beginning.
So I was forced to take an undefended attack. Okay. So I chose the Mirkwood Bats. They only hit for 1. I don't even think we discussed the Mirkwood Bats. They're new for this set as well.
They are. I've got them right here.
Okay. Do you want to just quickly say what the Bats do?
Yeah. They got an engagement cost of 22.
Yeah, that was coming for me.
Threat of 1. Hit for 1. Defend for 1. Hit points 1. Surge, as you say, they're a creature forced. After Mirkwood Bats engage a player, deal 1 damage to each character controlled by the player guarding Gollum. Now that can be a really nasty effect, especially if you've got someone like Bilbo, as you said, in your you've got Hobbit, then you've got a couple of hit points.
Yeah,
nasty.
Yeah, so these guys come out, and when they engage, they deal 1 damage. That includes Gollum, by the way, because that character is now. You're now controlling that character, of course. Okay, so that's the Bats and the King Spider. So they both came to me. I had to do an undefended attack because I quested with 2 of my heroes. I don't think I had any allies out. The Mirkwood Bats only hits for 1. The shadow on the Mirkwood Bats was on Goliant's Spawn. Okay? Its regular shadow, if you remember, is raise the defending player's threat by 4. The undefended shadow,
in brackets,
raise your threat by 8.
Oh my goodness.
I had no cancellation for the shadows, so my threat is now at 34 at that stage. Okay. I didn't have any way of attacking those enemies. The round came to an end. I decided I had to get rid of those enemies. I gambled on not committing anyone to the quest. I thought I just need.
But you've raised your threat by another 4.
Oh, I've raised my threat by another 4, so I'm at 38 now.
Yeah.
So I gambled on not committing anyone to the quest. The next card of the deck is like, please be a treachery, please be a treachery, please be a treachery. I can't let my threat go up. It's Gollum's Anguish.
46.
Threat up by another 8, up to 46.
Oh, game over.
Yeah, end of the round. Game over.
Thanks for playing. Insert 1 quarter to continue.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah, so I've got a special place in my heart for Gollum's Anguish there.
God, 26. He had 2 + 8. That's brutal, to be fair.
Yeah.
He went up 12 both rounds.
Okay, well, yeah. So that's a very, very nasty treachery. Do you want to grab one of the other? I mean, there's two more, and they're both horrendous.
Well, the one that's really horrendous, in my opinion, is Gollum's bite.
Oh, yeah.
Which is another tantrum. It's Gollum looking like he's tucking into someone's arm, but kind of looking at you while he's doing it, like he's eyeing you up next for a little munch.
Yeah, I wish this was your arm.
It might be your arm. This might be a point of view shot, to be honest.
Hang on. Yeah, that's possible.
Could be. You're checking where the fun was. Yeah. And when revealed, deal 4 damage to a hero controlled by the player guarding Gollum. That player must choose a new player to guard Gollum if able. 4. So
for me, that was a dead hero.
It's a dead hero for most heroes.
Yeah.
Right? That's the kind of thing, though, that the Mirkwood bats can actually absolutely stitch you up, because they've added... So let's say I had Aragorn. If I engage the bats, he gets 1 on him. Then if you get Gollum's bite, you either lose one of your other heroes or you lose Aragorn. So you're guaranteed, even with a hero 5, you get 1 damage through a Mirkwood bat or something. Again, you're guaranteed losing a hero.
Yeah.
It's very hard to survive with all your heroes intact if you get Gollum's bite at some point. So it's again, that one and Gollum's anguish are real potential game enders.
I just made a note on Gollum's bite. It just simply says Gollum's bite must be cancelled.
Yeah. Yes. Did you make a note on the card? Is that what it says in pen?
Yes.
Must be cancelled. So you never forget. It should be. Can I just point out the last new location, which we haven't discussed yet?
Oh, yeah,
I think
sure.
it's probably a good place to... There's another location called Dry Watercourse, which doesn't seem that bad when you look at it. It's got a threat of 2, and you need 2 to get through it. It's forest. And the text says, while Dry Watercourse is the active location, all treachery card effects that target the player guarding Gollum also target each other player. So those 2 cards we just looked at deal 4 damage to a hero for the player guarding Gollum, raise the threat by 8 for the person guarding Gollum. That goes for everybody. 2-player, 3-player, 4-player. All players will have that. So be very careful if you're playing multiplayer about the Dry Watercourse. Make sure you're able to cancel treacheries and stuff. Otherwise, you get one of those, and that could decimate 2, 3 players, whatever. Yeah. So that's a little bit of it's dynamics
just
between the cards there. Yeah,
it's just horrendous, the whole thing. Okay, well we have one more treachery, which we'll quickly look at now. We're doing the treacheries now. And that is wasted provisions. And this is from your flying provisions. So Gollum, the thing is, I love the theme of all these treacheries. I love that it's all based around Gollum kicking up a fuss, being just being a villain and causing so much noise that it increases your threat. It's making you lose stuff. It's so thematic. I think it's absolutely beautiful. I mean, I hate it, but I love it.
Yeah. Exactly. That's why we love this game.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. So wasted provisions. What has he done now? It says, when revealed... Oh, it's a tantrum. When revealed, discard the top 10 cards from the deck of the player guarding Gollum. That player must choose a new player to guard Gollum if able. Now, I have a love-hate relationship with wasted provisions because obviously, I only have 50 cards in my deck. I know this doesn't affect you. But 10 cards out of my deck normally would be absolutely horrendous. And I do think it is horrendous in general. However, I was playing a Spirit Lore deck, as I mentioned, and I found that you could actually use this to your benefit, but you do have to have a little bit of luck on your side. That I had Dwarven Tomb in my deck, and Dwarven Tomb allows you to get spirit cards out of your discard pile. And of course, you have threat reduction in the form of Gladrium's Greeting, things like that in your spirit deck. Now, because you have to go super quick through this whole AP, getting wasted provisions near the beginning of the game is no bad thing. If you have Dwarven Tomb in your hand, or several, hopefully,
because if you can get that treachery and discard 10 cards and you've got Dwarven Tomb, you can pick out Gladrian's Greeting if it's there, and likely it will be, so you don't have to wait for it. And that actually can be a lifesaver, and that's Gollum inadvertently helping us along the way.
See, for me, in one player, I didn't mind this card at all, because I was never getting close to getting near through my deck.
Of course you weren't.
And actually, to be honest, although, can I shock you? I used, listener, a 50-card deck for this quest.
My God. It had to happen sooner or later.
It had to happen. And I'll tell you a story about that in a second. So this one, for me, in one player, was just logically, it didn't seem much of a punishment. It was just changing just happened to be, however you shuffled your cards. Yeah. If you've got to shuffle your cards again later, okay, obviously those 10 which are gone, you can't get anymore. You could be unlucky. Obviously, every time it happened, you'd lose a sneak attack and a Gandalf, or standard fare, sometimes a couple or three. But it's like six of 10 cards with sneak attacks and Gandalfs. But generally, I mean, who's to say whether the first 10 or the 10 after that are going to be of benefit to you or not? So to me, it didn't bother me too much, and I'd much rather see this than see any of the others, of the other two. By a mile.
Yeah.
So I wasn't too bothered about this card. It's probably me missing something, to be honest. But it didn't really affect me too much, I must admit.
No, I understand, especially because you have to go so quickly, so you aren't going to get through your deck. Although I was playing with Bilbo, and I often build my decks around card draw, so I was getting a lot of cards in my hand. But because I had built around getting cards out of my discard with Dwarven Tomb and also Stand and Fight, I was able to, it didn't bother me. Get the cards in the discard, let me actually look at them and get the cards I needed, so I could really treat it as I could really turn it around and treat it as a positive.
Yeah. I used Dwarven Tomb in my deck as well, purely to get things. Well, to get Gladrian's Greeting, basically.
Yeah, and also once you've used Gladrian's Greeting, Dwarven Tomb it back into your hand, use it immediately again.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, for
exactly.
sure.
That was the plan. Okay, so they're the treacheries. I guess there are some other nasty treacheries as well that we've seen before, like Eyes of the Forest, which makes you discard all of your events, or Despair, which removes 4 progress tokens. To be honest, I guess that one's really comes into effect more on that first quest card, doesn't it? More than anything else when you've got to get through the 12. But the other one is one I've always really disliked, which is Caught in a Web.
Oh my God!
I just not a fan of that card. It's just so annoying.
Yeah, well, Caught in a Web. I mean, I the first time I played this Return to Mirkwood, that was the first card I drew off the deck. So immediately,
yes, I remember you. You sent me the picture of that. Here we go, first game in a while.
Let's play this. I haven't played this for a while. Let's see what's the first card. Oh, Caught in a Web, great. But actually, I did get around it quite nicely, because a lot of people would just swipe the table and start again. I don't like to do that. I like to always see if there is a way out. Exactly. So that went onto Bilbo, and actually I drew out of my hand with my first 2 cards off of my deck. I got a fast hitch, so I managed to put that onto Bilbo. So basically, I could just ready him with a fast hitch every round, and Caught in the Web didn't bother me. So let that be a lesson. Never give up. There is usually a way out, unless there isn't.
You can get like an unexpected courage or something like this, whatever it is. Yeah. I definitely agree. If you get Atticop first off,
yeah, you're in trouble.
That might be a bit of a different story. However, still worth playing out, because they're going to take long.
No, exactly.
So that was card 3B. Well, was there anything else you want to say on treachery?
No. I don't want to revisit them.
So 3B. So just to reiterate, that was the player guarding Gollum cannot play cards from his hand.
Oh, that's right. Oh my God, what a nightmare.
So when you're playing 2-player though, that became really interesting.
Yeah.
Now, before we talk about that, shall we just go on to the last quest card?
Sure.
Because I think there's a bit of a linkage there. So the last quest card is quest card 4, called Ambush. So 4A reads, as you make the final push to Thranduil's palace, your enemies make a desperate attempt to ambush your party and seize Gollum for themselves.
Get your own Gollum.
yeah, exactly. And 4B, when you flip it over, you see straight away that you only require 2 to get through here. Forced, at the beginning of the combat phase, all enemies in play engage the player guarding Gollum.
Yeah.
Players cannot defeat the stage if there are enemies in play. If players defeat the stage, they have won the game.
Okay.
So, the reason just sort of held fire about that 2-player discussion from the previous card is, so the previous one was the player guarding Gollum cannot play cards from his hand.
Yeah.
But what's going to happen is, as soon as you get through that, all of the enemies at the beginning of the combat phase are going to come to the player guarding Gollum.
Yeah.
And each combat phase you go around as well. So you have to be really aware about who's guarding Gollum and planning that out. So I think when we were successful playing it 2-player, we actually managed that piece of it really well on that particular go. And that really helped, didn't it? Because I was in a position where I could handle the fighting essentially, and you're in a position where you could just about get over the quest, even though I think you'd lost a hero by that point.
I think I'd lost a hero, and we did have a few locations in the staging area. But yeah, your deck was much more geared towards fighting than mine. I mean, when I played solo, I've been quite lucky in this. When I've got to quest card 4, I've always won. But I've only got to quest card 4 solo, I think, twice. But you know it's coming, and because there aren't that many progress tokens needed on that quest, you can, at that point, I always find when you have to defeat a lot of enemies on that final quest card, it's never really that big a deal because it is at the end of the game. You probably have got your allies out at this point. You got someone you could sacrifice in a defense if necessary, and then you can just pile everyone onto the enemies that you've got.
But on this particular quest, on the previous card, you can't play any cards from your hand.
No, yes, so you have to really prepare,
Yeah, the whole second half of this quest, exactly. You've got to get them out early, or then suddenly at the end. But there will be a combat phase straight away, of course, when you get to that.
And actually, that's very interesting because that first quest card, of course, there are no special prerequisites. You just have to quest through it. But it's 12 progress tokens, which is actually a lot in this quest. So you do have a bit of time to build up your forces. But of course, you don't have any time because your threat's going up by 4 every round.
That's it. Exactly.
Which I think is where it really differs when it's between solo and 2-player or 3-player. Where you can manage your threat a bit more, well, a lot more when you get into multiplayer. You can bounce Gollum around where necessary. I mean, yes, you do have locations which are stopping you from doing that. You do have treacheries which force you to move Gollum around. But in general, at the end of each round, you can get Gollum away from you if necessary and allow yourself a bit of breathing room to lower your threat or whatever it is you need to do. In solo, oh, good luck to you. You just have to rush. Rush.
Yeah. You know what?
And cancel.
Rush and cancel. When I hadn't played the game for a little while. When we came back to this quest.
Nice quest to come back to.
Yes. And I had a deck of 50 cards.
Yeah.
Okay. And my heroes were Aragorn, Eowyn, and Prince Imrahil.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a neat... Well, to be honest, it was just based on the deck I'd beat it with the first time round, which I'd made a note of and saved it on RingsDB. I made a couple of tweaks and chucked it in there. And I completed this in 5 rounds.
Well, when you win quickly.
Yeah.
But, well, let's face it, you have to.
But it was I thought, well, that was easy. Easy quest. I must have absolutely nailed my deck selection, and I've kind of massaged it just tweaked it slightly.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. This is easy.
You've mastered the game now.
I played it again, and I won in 6 rounds. And I played it again, and I won in 6 rounds again.
Impressive.
And that's all I did that first night. I thought, I've won this 3 times. This is easy. I've nailed this. No problem. And then I played it again a few days later. Well, let's, I'll use the same deck just for my first go, just to prove the point, and then maybe I'll try a different deck,
Yeah.
And I got absolutely annihilated on that go. Then I beat it just Then I got annihilated another couple of times, I think 3 more times. So I got to the point where I'd won 4 and lost 4.
Yeah.
After having sailed through it initially. And then I kind of thought, and it may have been just happened to be the deck which I'd put together. But what I was finding was it was kind of depending on what I was drawing early from the deck. So if I was getting... So that first time I won it in 5 goes, I think I got 1 enemy in the whole thing.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of locations which I could kind of get through. I think I got a treachery which didn't treat me too badly or whatever it was. I had a Galadriel's greeting or 2 in my hand, whatever it was. I managed to reduce my threat. I only needed to do it once, I think, to win the game. But then when I got annihilated, it's when I got an enemy or 2 out early. And they didn't always have to be the strongest enemies.
No.
But if the enemies come early, I think this becomes a real challenge. This quest, and I'm only talking from my experience of playing a leadership and spirit deck. It was really interesting to see that, and I think when we played it 2-player, even though the experience was completely different and we saw way more dynamics coming in, I think there's still an element of truth to that as well. Like if you got bad things come out early, like that time you were in charge of drawing out the it's the first time whenever we've played 2-player before, I've been the one kind of controlling the game and you've been the one kind of mimicking what I'm doing at your end. And because I was new to the game and I was learning, that was a really good way to do it. I think now we're at a point where we can spread it around. And then the first couple of games that we had 2-player, you drew the worst possible first one, Atacop.
I don't know why we didn't quit.
We had, what was it? Because you drew Atacop, and something else really nasty as our first 2 cards.
Yeah.
At the beginning, at the setup. And then when we quested, you got another Atacop.
Yeah.
And it was...
We still played it through. It took us like 2 hours. Yes. It took us about 2 hours to not win.
Yeah, which we knew we weren't going to. And we still managed to get the 3rd Atacop.
I played the majority of that game with 1 hero.
Yes, you did. It was an Eowyn. Was it Eowyn?
Yeah, Eowyn. We had to keep Eowyn alive.
Because your deck was Eowyn...
Yeah, my deck was Eowyn, Bilbo, and Denethor. And that was the same deck I was using when I was playing solo. And actually, Denethor is a real hero in this deck. When I was playing solo, Denethor, if you just got to... You keep him ready, and if anything nasty comes out, you can defend with him because he's a great defender. But if you don't have to defend, you just exhaust him at the end of the round to see what the next card coming off the encounter deck is. And what I was doing is, like, if it was anything nasty, anything that I didn't want to face, Atacop, the Hill Troll, Ungoliant Spawn, and then sometimes some of these treacheries and locations as well, I would just chuck them straight to the bottom of the deck. I got an unexpected courage on him, and I was just doing it twice. If I didn't like it, it was going to the bottom of the deck. I would ready him, and I would look again, and hopefully I'd be okay, so I'd know what was coming. But if it was nasty again, straight to the bottom of the deck. And then complete control of the encounter deck like that really just allowed me... that when I won the game, it was by completely controlling the encounter deck. I did have a couple of... I won't go through my entire deck at all, but basically it was a spirit lore deck, so I had very little fighting in there at all. So I was really trying to avoid those enemies. So that's why Denethor, just chuck them away, get rid of them. But there are a couple of interesting things which it's more for people who are interested in like some nuances. And one of them, like I said, right back when you were reading from the insert there, that it mentions that Gollum is treated as a character and you can play attachments on him. I thought I was being super clever and smart about this, but apparently it's just written in the rules. But I played out self-preservation onto Gollum.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I was just taking, when I knew that he could survive it, I was just taking undefended attacks, and that damage was going on to Gollum, and then I'd just use self-preservation to heal him. Because it doesn't happen that often.
That heals 3, does it?
Heals 2. Heals 2, but you could just use it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Once per round, of course. So that was... I thought I was being super smart about that. But then one other time when I think I am being super smart, but I didn't actually do it. So, classic.
Yeah, we'll put that into our bucket of great ideas we had, which we never implemented.
Exactly. Radagast. Now, Radagast you can use his resources
yes.
to heal creatures.
That's right.
And what is Gollum?
Yeah, a creature.
It is.
It is.
Yeah, so that's. But then I think it's not as brilliant an idea as I'd like to, as I'm presenting, because to get the 5 resources to get Radagast out, it's nigh on impossible, actually. And and that leads me on to you mentioned earlier that the Northern Tracker costs 4. Northern Tracker or Loring? No, Northern Tracker costs 4.
Northern Tracker's 4, yeah.
Yeah, Northern Tracker costs 4, and therefore it's quite hard to get out, even in your deck, which had leadership in as well, which means that you could obviously play Steward of Gondor onto your Spirit Hero and generate more resource. But I used another 4-cost ally, Elfhelm. Now, I don't know if you remember this from a couple of episodes ago when we were talking about the Rohan allies. Now, Elfhelm is a Rohan ally, and I don't have the card in front of me, but essentially, when he is ready, if there's any encounter cards or quest cards that increase your threat, you can then lower your threat by 1. Now, even though Gollum, the creature Gollum, acts as an ally under your control, he is still an encounter card. He still has that dirty Eye of Sauron on the back of him. He is still an encounter card. He is taken out of the encounter deck on quest card 1A. Search the encounter deck for Gollum. He is an encounter card. So therefore, Gollum's forced effect of raising your threat by 3 each at the end of each round counts for Elfhelm's response. So if you can get Elfhelm out, it costs 4. So again, you've got to save up for him, which is not always possible. He means your threat only goes up by 3 each time if you're playing solo. And that, on the few times I got Elfhelm out, was absolutely key. It's amazing the difference that 1 reduction comes down. Oh, and also an interesting thing about that is that Elfhelm states that when he's ready, you can do this response. And during the refresh phase, the end phase, the refresh phase, during the refresh phase of the round, the order of play is that you ready all your allies and heroes, then raise your threat, and then of course all your forced effects happen. So actually, the first thing that happens is that all your allies become ready. So you can use Elfhelm throughout the course of the round, do what you like with him. Quest with him, fight with him, defend with him, doesn't matter. By the time you raise your threat because of Gollum's forced effect, he's ready and you'll only raise it by 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
But just as a caveat, I mean, this is very, very niche. If you happen to be on a threat of 46, you would still lose the game because your threat would go up. Oh, no, but would you?
No, because your threat goes up by 1 at the end of the round and 2 for Gollum.
No, 3 for Gollum. Yeah, so it would go
2 because of Elfhelm.
It goes up and then you reduce it.
Surely all at the same time.
No. Well, yeah, but surely at the same time for increasing. But Elfhelm,
no, overall.
It says you reduce it by 1. Every time your threat is increased, you can reduce it back down by 1. Oh, I'd have to find the card to be specific.
Well, okay. So if you happen to be on 46, okay.
Yeah, it's incredibly niche.
Yeah. That could be important.
It could be important, but just bear that in mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you can get him out, that's my hot tip.
But yeah, absolutely. And when we did defeat, we used the same decks to play the 2-player. Obviously, we both had Eowyn, so I replaced Eowyn with Dunhir, who was one of 2 spirit choices. 3 spirit choices up to that point in the cycle, which was the others being Eleanor, who can get rid of when revealed effects, but then replaces with another. So it didn't seem. And the other one was Frodo. And what Frodo can do is, if you get damage on Frodo, you can increase your threat. So that didn't seem ideal for this one. So Dunhir was the guy who actually proved to be really useful. Because he could take out enemies in the staging area. And we used that quite a bit. And actually what we found was, playing 2-player, we were able to use that dynamic of moving Gollum really pretty well to our advantage.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the mad rush that it is in one player.
No, absolutely not. It's one player. You just have to plow through it. If you do
keep
not,
your fingers crossed for the cards.
if you do not beat this game within 4 or 5 rounds, you're probably not going to beat it. But in 2
you
player,
do well in 4 rounds.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's very true. That is very true. But in 2 player, you can definitely take a bit more time. You can be a bit more tactical about how you're bouncing Gollum around,
and you have time to get those heroes. So, like we said earlier, we got Tracker out and a Lorien Guide. They were just unbelievably useful. As was Elfhelm. You got Elfhelm out. At the time we defeated it, we had Elfhelm sitting there reducing. So you held on to Gollum an awful lot more than I did.
Yeah,
where we managed it all like that. We were using the Tracker to get through those locations. We're using Snowborn Scouts to defend, and that was really useful because I could use Aragorn's ability to refresh so I could quest him, pay the resource, he was ready.
Yeah.
I also had some unexpected courage in the deck too. Prince Imrahil, after a character leaves play, he readies once around. So where we had something like Atacop, we'd defend. I'd take him. So on that time, if we can, get Gollum across to me, or maybe we've seen it because we've used Denethor, whatever it was. It was a really nice dynamic, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And then I'd get Gollum, Atacop would come to me, sacrifice a Snowborn Scout, but that would ready Imrahil, Aragorn would ready, and so suddenly you're attacking with 6 just with those 2. So if you've got 1 or 2 other guys there, you can pretty much get rid of Atacop or in 1 or 2 rounds.
Yeah.
So it was actually, it enabled us to manage that whole scenario really well. It took a while, but I really enjoyed that game. It was a real challenge, and it was really thematic at the same time, just from a game perspective, being really fun. Having said that, when it did go badly, we got absolutely whooped and crushed. so we still saw both sides of it.
Yeah.
It was really satisfying to get a victory in 2 player, I'd say, in this quest, probably more than any of the other ones we've done.
I think so. I absolutely had a ball with it, and I
enjoyed it 1 player too.
I did enjoy it 1 player, but
2 player came to its own, didn't it?
But I think in 1 player, it really has to work. You can have a deck which is geared towards beating this quest, but it can still fail, as you've found out, and as I found out. My deck will beat this quest, but not every time. You've got to have the luck of the draw. It is very, very tough, and things have to go your way. And in 2 player, I think you can have a lot more control over what's happening. So you don't necessarily have to have the exact deck for beating it. You can have 2 pretty good decks and work out a way to beat it.
What was really cool about the 2 player ones, we had a hell of a lot more of those situations where we tried something and it came off and it was great, and also had some, we should have done this.
Yeah.
If only we'd done that. And that came up a lot as well, which I also love. And
it helps you learn. Helps you learn and think about things for the next time you play.
Yeah, and also when you should have taken a risk on something when you shouldn't, and it was I thought it really came into its own.
Yeah,
we've played quite a few of them. Well, I say quite a few. We've probably played 5 or 6 different quests 2 player. We've probably played most of them, I'd say, at some point 2 player. Obviously, the Dol Guldur is the one that really you got to play 2 player. I know there will be people who've done it 1 player, but
Dol Guldur, I feel like you have to play 2 player in order to beat it. This one, you don't have to play 2 player, I think this one, the experience is enhanced by playing it 2 player.
Yeah. Yes, agreed. So, exactly. So Dol Guldur was still enjoyable 1 player, but just really hard. I actually did defeat it 1 player, but it was not using cards in the cycle. I had to put together some really... that's a story for another day. So when it comes to rating difficulty of this quest, 7 might be kind of right, because I think when I was playing 1 player, like I said earlier, really I was at the mercy of the card draw. Sometimes it was easy, and other times it was impossible. So how do you gauge it? There was only a couple of times where it was kind of tight. 2 player, I'd say 7, 8, something like that. Maybe 7. 7's probably right, I'd say.
I think it's about right. I think it is a really tough quest, but in an enjoyable way. I think there are some brutal enemies in here, but they're kind of hilariously brutal that you have to really think about how to get through. Because what's also interesting, with quests which have brutal enemies, you tend to immediately go, well, we better get some tactics guys in here. We better soup up Gimli and take out these guys. But neither of us played tactics. And actually, I think tactics is probably absolutely the wrong choice to play for this. Certainly solo. I don't think you'd have a hope with tactics. You just do not have the questing power to get through it, and the enemies don't. Destroying the enemies is not going to help you get through this quest solo.
Tactics do not fare well in Mirkwood, it seems. Because when you play the very first quest, I started off with tactics, I think, and I couldn't defeat the thing. So way back in podcast number 1, 2, 3, whatever it was, talking about that, couldn't beat it. But then you do a leadership, and suddenly you're kind of okay, this is kind of working, and then you start doing the combos. I would probably think if you had a 2-player thing going on, you probably could get away with at least like a 2 tactics hero deck or something like that.
But I think if you're playing 2-player, one of us could have easily had tactics in the deck. Yeah, for sure. I think if you could actually play with all 4 spheres with this particular quest, you'd be golden.
So if I had, actually, that probably does work actually, because I had 2 leadership and 1 spirit, and spirit was done here.
Yeah,
and so done here wasn't questing an awful lot. Really, because he only quests for 1.
Dune here was great, actually, though, for those older enemies.
Yes, because you just take them out.
Taking them out in the staging. The Hummer Horns are up there, and the Goblin Sniper.
And the Sniper. He was really useful on the Sniper, because that guy can really stitch you up.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, though, I think having the spirit cards there was just so useful.
Cancellation. If there was very rarely a time when we played 2-player that neither of us didn't have a test of will in our hand.
Yeah,
because we had 6 between us.
Yeah, but I'm sure there are other ways to do it, and I'm sure there'll be people listening to this who go, I've done this through a tactics and lore deck or something like that. I bet there are. It's just it'll be interesting to see. Maybe some more experiment. And to be honest, I wouldn't mind experimenting more with this particular quest. It's a really enjoyable one. It's not a really unruly one. It's quite a focused kind of quest.
Yeah, exactly. It is focused. I think it's a beautifully thematic quest. I love how it ties up the cycle. I really enjoy going back to Mirkwood. As much as the spiders give us grief, I love just the imagery. I love the idea that we're going through Mirkwood and the spiders are coming for us. And the fact that it ties it back into that very first quest, which, you'd have to be pretty cold to not have a fond place in your heart for the very first quest you play in this game.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. I think it's got a big thumbs up from the pair of us, this one.
Definitely. All right. Well, I think we have probably discussed it enough. But yeah, I'd absolutely be up for playing it again 2-player with some different decks just to see what happens. But for now, I think it's time we sort of wrap this up.
Yeah.
Unless you have anything else to add?
No, I think we're good. That's the end of the cycle.
Oh, yeah.
Very exciting.
It is. Yeah. So, that's very true. So actually, we need to go away and think about how we're going to approach the first deluxe box, but that is certainly some exciting times. So yeah, I'm going to look forward to it. Okay, well, we're going to wrap this up, but if you would like to get in touch with us, maybe to discuss escape tests or anything you'd like, there are several ways.
No.
There are several ways you can get in contact with us. You can get in contact with us directly via email at latertherings@gmail.com. You can contact us via Twitter, which is @latertherings. And we have the Board Game Geek thread, which, as ever, there'll be a link to in the show notes. With that, all it leaves me to say is thanks once again for listening. Thank you for sticking with us throughout the first cycle. And until next time, take care out there and goodbye.
Bye.